Okay. Now we're going to get into another story here. Chris Cuomo and Mehdi Hasan had a little bit of a debate on News Nation. Now, Chris Cuomo, he is another one that has been disingenuous about his coverage about the protesters in this country. Been very disingenuous, and he knows exactly what he's doing. We cannot say that he no longer works for corporate media because News Nation is a part of Nexstar. Nexstar is corporate, just like The Hill Rising. So he does work for corporate media still. Do not be confused. That being said, he had a conversation with Mehdi Hasan here because he believes that the reason why Josh Shapiro was not chosen as VP is because the left in this country is anti-Semitic. You can't make this up, man. You can't make it up. Let's bring it in. This is a good one, though.
A great debater. Zeteo is the name of his new enterprise. I love the word. It means to seek in Greek, and it's great. Media company. Mehdi Hasan, former MSNBC host, I believe the best they had in the stable, joins us now. Mehdi, we got 5 good minutes. Explain to me your understanding of why Walz was the right pick and it wasn't Shapiro.
Oh, just to get to the point very quickly, Tim Walz is America's fun uncle. He's likable. He's charismatic. He's a great attack dog. He's a Midwest governor. He's done amazing things in his state with just a 1-seat majority in the Senate, expanded child tax credit, expanded voting rights, secured abortion rights, gun control. He's a gun owner, though, as well, and a hunter. So he ticks a lot of...
Pause. He's also done some other things too. Don't forget again, Mehdi Hasan, even though he's no longer a part of MSNBC, he still has status quo and establishment talking points. It's hard for people to leave what, he may have left MSNBC, but it's still part of him. So just keep that in mind. We talked about some other things about Tim Walz. He's not perfect either. We talked about the fact that he was the one that called in the National Guard during the George Floyd protest. Don't forget about that. We talked about the fact that he broke treaties for indigenous tribes because he did not want to stop Line 3. So we're talking about another pipeline that went on indigenous land, which is not supposed to happen, giving them dirty water again. Again, all you got to do is point to places like Flint, Michigan. So there are a number of things that Tim Walz did. Tim Walz is also a Zionist. So this is why this conversation that Chris Cuomo had to me didn't make any sense, because his whole framing was that people didn't push Josh Shapiro to be a part of Kamala's possible administration because the left is anti-Semitic, or they didn't want him because the left doesn't want Jewish people or something like that. It was really ridiculous because Tim Walz is a Zionist. He has spoken at AIPAC conventions. Yes, he was one of the first politicians to call out for a ceasefire, but he does doublespeak just like Kamala Harris. He was calling for a ceasefire, but he still thinks that we should send weapons to Israel. So like I said, you got to know all of it. You have to know all of it. Let's continue.
Boxes. He's what Democrats have been waiting for a long time, and he compliments Kamala Harris very well.
Pennsylvania is more important. Shapiro is a star in the making. He was being trotted out as a favorite. What happened?
Okay. So Chris Cuomo believes that she should have chosen Shapiro because he feels that Pennsylvania is more important. It just, nothing about his policies, nothing about his character. We're talking about a guy who covered up a murder, right? This guy is not innocent. We're talking about a guy who covered up a murderer. We're talking about a guy who called student protesters KKK members. Like, this is what we're talking about, folks. And he's just like, Pennsylvania is more important. That's all that matters. Another one, Chris Cuomo, another one from an elite, privileged family.
So I can't believe you're making me do this, Chris Cuomo, but I'm going to agree with Bill O'Reilly for the first time in my life, who was on your previous segment. I'm going to take a shower straight after this, don't worry. But he said it right, that, Shapiro went in. He's very ambitious. I think CNN reported that he was overly ambitious in his interview with the vice president. Politico said that the vice president camp thought he was showboating. Now, I'm not saying I agree with that. I'm just saying that was the perception from the Harris campaign as reported by CNN Politico. Look, picking a running mate, you've got to gel together. You've got to have some chemistry. She had it with Walz. She didn't have it with Shapiro. As for winning Pennsylvania, there's no actual academic evidence that governors in swing states win races for you on the ticket. True. Now, let's just cut to the chase, Chris. The reason I'm here is because you were on Twitter last night suggesting to me that it has to be anti-Semitism. What else could it be? And I've just explained to you many reasons.
No. I didn't say it has to be.
To explain to you,
I didn't say it couldn't be anything else.
Well,
yes, he did. Chris did say that. I saw the back and forth between Mehdi Hasan and Chris Cuomo. See, people don't see this if you're not on Twitter, but Chris Cuomo likes to say one thing on Twitter and say something a little bit different when he's on News Nation. But if you follow his Twitter account, you'll see some of the things. He likes to pick some fights with people sometimes. But yeah, he did say that. Look at the expression on Mehdi Hasan's face.
Not wrong to ask because the context, Mehdi. One.
Give me evidence.
Okay, here it is.
Let me turn it around. What's the evidence that it's anti-Semitism?
Here, look, I don't know that.
I haven't seen any.
I don't know that it is, but it's not wrong to ask, especially in this context. Your premise that he walked in there and they didn't like him, they already knew him. They were pushing him. They liked him. He wasn't so interested in it because he was afraid of what it would mean living in Pennsylvania. She wanted him to come in. So contextually, I don't know that he could have just walked in.
Actually, I'm going to push back on that. Nancy Pelosi had already publicly stated that she supported and endorsed Tim Walz before Kamala even made the selection. I believe Bernie Sanders also made that statement before Kamala made the selection. So when Chris Cuomo says they wanted Josh Shapiro, two of them didn't. And another thing, by the way, if he believes it's anti-Semitism and that's the reason why Josh Shapiro wasn't selected, well, is it misogynist because Kamala Harris didn't choose a woman? Is it? I mean, we can come up with a whole bunch of different things. Is it misogynist that she didn't choose Gretchen Whitmer? I didn't see Chris Cuomo make a statement about that. It's the same guy who threatened to throw someone down the stairs because they called him Fredo.
And pissed them all off.
But that doesn't mean it was anti-Semitism.
No. Now I got another piece. I got another piece.
Someone who doesn't.
I got another piece. I got another piece of proof.
Chris, let me jump. Go on.
Here's the next piece of proof. So they're trotting him out as the favorite. Then the far left flank starts calling him Genocide Josh. And all of a sudden, he starts getting all this heat from them about his position on Israel. And
pause. The reason why people were calling him Genocide Josh is because he volunteered for the IDF. Now, obviously, if you're an Israeli by a certain age, you have to participate in the IDF. He is an American. He grew up here in America. He volunteered to go over to Israel and be a part of the IDF to kill Palestinian people. So they had every right to call him Genocide Josh. So how is that? Do you see what I'm saying? The anger and the frustration is misdirected. Instead of that anger and frustration being directed towards Josh Shapiro with his statements and his actions, volunteering to go kill Palestinian people, his frustration is towards the protesters and the names that were, called, that he was called. This is what kills me, folks. Again, yeah, Genocide Josh, you volunteered to go kill people.
And all of a sudden, he starts getting all this heat from them about his position on Israel. And a lot of it was ugly on there that went way beyond his take on Gaza and seemed to be a reflection of his faith. And now you have Jewish voters in New York being split between Trump and Harris because of how they perceive it. This is where I'm going to
push back, Chris.
Go ahead.
So I'm going to push back here, Chris. No, you've got no evidence that any prominent leftist, any prominent Democrat mentioned his faith, cared about his faith. The article in the New Republic that laid out the case against Shapiro and Israel was written by David Cleon, who is a Jewish writer from New York. We're allowed to criticize his stance on Israel without being accused of anti-Semitism.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. Yes, you are. I want to go back to this poll, though. Look at this. Jewish New Yorkers, Kamala Harris, 49%, Donald Trump, 50%, almost split right down the middle. Really interesting, huh? And before Kamala announced that she was running in this race, Donald Trump was actually gaining supporters from Black voters in New York. So this will be interesting to see. I mean, obviously, I think New York is still going to be a blue state because of New York City. That's where most of the people are. But that's interesting.
The article in the New Republic that laid out the case against Shapiro on Israel was written by David Cleon, who is a Jewish writer from New York. We're allowed to criticize his stance on Israel without being accused of anti-Semitism.
Yes.
Genocide, Josh, it's very inflammatory. It's not a phrase I would use, but it's not anti-Semitic because, hold on, they call Joe Biden Genocide Joe, and Joe Biden is not Jewish. So it's not an anti-Semitic pejorative. It's a pejorative. It's not anti-Semitic. So even if they rejected him because they're worried about losing Arab American voters in Michigan, that's because of his Israel views, not because of his faith. J.B. Pritzker is the Jewish governor of Illinois. He has not said as many inflammatory things about Palestinians or campus protesters as Shapiro. I would have been fine with Pritzker. I wouldn't have been fine with Shapiro. So it's got nothing to do with his faith. It's insane for Trump and Republicans and others to suggest that this is about Judaism. The most senior political officials who are Jewish in this country are Democrats, the Secretary of State, the Attorney General, all four Jewish governors in America. They're all Democrats, right? The only person who's ever run on a ticket for president or vice president who's Jewish was Joe Lieberman on a Democratic ticket. And by the way, accusing the far left of being anti-Jewish is so absurd because in 2024, a lot of the far left are going to vote for Jill Stein, who is Jewish. And in 2020, they wanted Bernie Sanders, who is Jewish. So let's stop.
Let's pause and think about that. We'll go back to that for just a second. This is why Chris looks so stupid. This is why Chris looks really dumb. Because this part right here, 2024.
The Attorney General, all four Jewish governors in America, they're all Democrats, right? The only person who's ever run on a ticket for president or vice president who's Jewish was Joe Lieberman on a Democratic ticket. And by the way, accusing the far left of being anti-Jewish is so absurd because in 2024, a lot of the far left are going to vote for Jill Stein, who is Jewish.
That's me. See, they like to leave this out. Chris Cuomo probably didn't like him saying that. Jill Stein has been on News Nation, so I don't know why Chris is trying to play dumb. She's been on News Nation multiple times for this presidential campaign, but that is a reality. Most of us in 2024 that they call far left or whatever, most of us are going to vote for Jill Stein. And I don't mean the far left that were like, oh, we just didn't want Biden. Now it's Kamala. I'm not talking about that. That's not far left. Those are just Democrats. Those are just standard Democrats. I'm talking about those of us that are to the left of the Democratic Party and are not willing to go along with the Democratic Party, period. I'm a registered independent. I came from the Bernie Sanders movement. And unlike some others, I still stand by those principles. And I still think that if we can give everyone in Israel health care and give everyone in Israel free college, we need to guarantee those things for people here in our own damn country. And we're sending money over there. So I still believe in those principles. And unlike others, I'm not willing to bend the knee and just go along with the Democrat establishment just because this is what we have. I'm not willing to do that. I want this system to break. I want us to have multiple parties in this country. We need to have fourth and fifth and sixth parties, just like they do in the UK. I don't understand why people just basically put themselves in this box of these two parties that, from my experience, are not benefiting the Black community. That's for sure. So I don't understand that. So I'm one of those people that will be voting for Jill Stein. Then he goes on to say this, how quickly he forgets.
And in 2020, they wanted Bernie Sanders, who is Jewish. So let's stop the nonsense gaslighting and weaponizing of anti-Semitism for partisan aims.
I don't know that Bernie.
That's true. See, this is what people forget. By the way, when Bernie was running in 2020, I remember, I believe it was the New Yorker. They created a picture that was, and this was anti-Semitic. It was a stereotype of Jewish people, and they made Bernie Sanders look like that stereotype. I don't remember seeing a lot of these pundits like Chris Cuomo and all of them on CNN and MSNBC. I don't remember them speaking out about that and saying that's not right, that's anti-Semitic. They weren't, because Bernie Sanders wasn't what the party wanted. What the party wanted was someone who was obviously more establishment, more status quo, etc. Now, Bernie has gone along with Dem leadership and he gave up a lot of his own damn values. All of them just fall in and get in line so they can continue to be career politicians. But that is true. So what is he talking about? We're talking about Bernie Sanders, the same person that was able to get thousands of people at his rallies. And I'm not talking about these rallies that Kamala Harris have. I'm talking about Bernie Sanders produced thousands and thousands and thousands of people at these rallies, way more than what you're seeing for Kamala Harris right now. This is what a lot of people forget. I was at those rallies and Bernie didn't have Meg the Stallion. Okay. People showed up based on the message alone. He didn't have to have Meg Thee Stallion. He didn't have Kid Rock. None of these famous musicians were at these rallies, except for the one I think he did in LA, which is with Public Enemy. And that was towards the end, before they were getting closer to, I think, getting closer to the end of the debates. But for the most part, people came out to hear about the policies and the platform. Kamala don't have that. That's why she bringing out Meg Thee Stallion and all these other people and yada, yada. So he goes on to say this part here.
In 2024, a lot of the far left are going to vote for Jill Stein, who is Jewish. And in 2020, they wanted Bernie Sanders, who is Jewish. So let's stop the nonsense gaslighting and weaponizing of anti-Semitism for partisan aims.
I don't know that Bernie would like that you say he's Jewish. He would say he's culturally Jewish. Now he's agnostic. But Mehdi, the argument...
No, Bernie, I've never heard Bernie Sanders say that. You see what I mean? You see what's trying to happen now? So now Chris is trying to make it seem like Bernie Sanders would not say that he is Jewish.
Not well true. He calls himself Jewish, Chris.
It depends. It depends. Mehdi,
no,
I
really
appreciate
doesn't.
you. Your arguments are well met and appreciated. I think that you got to ask questions, and it's good to have answers as well. Thank you for coming here to do it. We'll do it again soon.
You see, this is why I just, it's Chris is such a clown. He's such a clown. Like, I've never seen someone just such a fake clown, not willing to really speak to anybody that's really going to challenge him to that left. That's why he wouldn't have that conversation with Max Blumenthal. He's so scared. But Jill Stein, she tweeted this after she saw this exchange with Chris and Mehdi Hasan. While I don't think it's just the far left who want living wage jobs, housing, and healthcare as human rights, an urgent response to climate crisis, and an end to the war and genocide, I appreciate the shout out. I'd be happy to discuss this on your show, Mehdi Hasan. So, Mehdi Hasan, the ball is now in your court. Will you take Jill Stein up on that offer? I think you should. And I would like to see, everybody keeps talking about the Kamala Trump debate, which apparently is now set in stone. It will be in September. I would like to see Kamala Harris debate Jill Stein. I would like to see that debate, because how are you going to debate Jill Stein on Israel and Gaza? You can't. It's not like Kamala can call her anti-Semitic. Jill Stein is Jewish.